I finally figured out how to get it so you guys can see the right way. You can read stuff like my shirt. And then also so you can see the cover properly, see it's the right way. I'm quite happy with myself, and it only took me like 5 minutes to figure out how to do that, so that's just great. Proves that I am quite good at technology, even though I think sometimes I am just downright stupid and like unknowledgeable about technology. But anywho, we're here to talk about the Scorch Trials. Now, I'll try to make a little non-spoiler blurb in the beginning, but it probably won't happen that well, because I mean, if you already read the first book, I'm assuming you're gonna watch this after you finish the second book. I don't know, that just seems logical to me, but if not, I'll try to keep spoilers out of this. First part at least. The second part I'm definitely giving spoilers, and if you don't want to hear spoilers, then don't watch that part. But here is the non-spoiler part. Well, if you saw the entirety of my last video about the Maze Runners, then you'll know that I made a prediction about what I thought would happen in this book. Well, from reading the back of the book, I saw that my prediction was quite off. The Group B was not shown as being the girls, right? It wasn't like, this wasn't their trials, which is what I had predicted before. This is basically a continuation from the Maze Runner. So we still see Thomas's perspective and all of that jazz. Again, this book jumps right in. It is fast-paced, which is good, which is, I think, better for a second book in a series than it is for a first, but it all fits kind of with what's happening in the book, so that was another good thing. Yeah, and I think that's all the stuff that is non-spoiler that I will talk about. So it was a great book. If you didn't read the first book, go and read that first. Read them in order. Don't do what I did for other series. Read Maze Runner first, then read the Scorch Trials, and then watch this video so you can discuss with me all the craziness that happens within. So if you have not read the book, do that right now. And if you haven't read the book, then please continue and watch, and maybe I'll raise some points that you agree with, disagree with, want to discuss it. But anyway, you've been warned, people who have not read the book and do not want spoilers, so there. Okay. Now, like I said in the beginning, I had predicted that this book was going to be about Group B. Group A was the boys, Thomas and Newt and all of them, and Teresa was part of that. So I had figured that the Scorch Trials would be about Group B, and that it would be a whole bunch of girls and then one guy. So kind of the opposite of Group A, of course. Now, when I first read the book, first started reading the book, well, even just reading the back cover, I realized we're not going to just see it from Group B's perspective. We're not going to see it from like a mirroring Thomas. So I was wrong in that respect. But then I came to find out that Group B was going to be included in this, that they would have a visible role in it, but not as big as I thought it would be, obviously. So first, this really continues right on from the last book. We see them in The Maze Runner being safe in the room, having been rescued from Wicked. And the guys are in one room, and then Teresa was separated from them. Well, we find out in this book why that happens. And I think if I was in that situation, I would have fought more to make sure I was not separated from the group of people who I've come to like trust, because you can't really trust the grown-ups. I don't see why they trusted the rescuers as much as they did. I mean, I guess it was because they hoped that they wouldn't get played around with anymore, but I mean, come on. Obviously they were going to be played around with, so they should have at least tried to fight a little bit more. They seemed a little too willing to go along with it. But I don't know, it might be different if I was actually in that place, but I don't know. I'll never know. Unless someone who is a bit messed up in the mind decides to create this kind of dystopian book, and it would not be fun, probably. But anyway. And then again, when the guys woke up, because we stay with Thomas and the guys throughout the entire novel, their perspective. Well, Thomas's perspective, we see his, but he's with the guys at that point. They wake up and they try to leave. Now, beforehand, the doors were locked, and then they break free of that, and they see dead bodies just hanging from the ceiling. That just completely, I would have started freaking out. Even though that there was the lunatic people who we later find out are called cranks, I think. Yes, cranks. But because they had bars around their windows, so there was no way that they were gonna come in and attack them. But I guess it was incentive. They had to go to the other room to find that Teresa was switched with Eris, who is from Group B and was Teresa's kind of counterpart. She was the only guy in a group of girls. And then we also find out that Teresa has the role of betrayer, which that was quite interesting. It kind of forces Thomas to keep that in the back of his mind the entire journey for the rest of the book, and I think that kind of influences him more to kind of feel betrayed by her, and that's all, that was Wicked's plan, to get him to be more likely to feel betrayed by her. But yes, they find Eris. They all talk and they confer about what happened in the trials, and they find out that both the Group B with the girls and Group A with the Gladers that we have known from the Maze Runner had very similar experiences. The only thing is that more girls survived than the guys. So that was interesting. And I think, it doesn't really say, but I think it's because the girls were probably less likely to sacrifice people who were bad, but I don't know. We don't know exactly what happened. It might have just been because they were better fighters or something. I don't know. I think that's just my theory, because when someone broke a rule in the Gladers, they were sacrificed to the maze. And because no one had survived it before Thomas came, they were most likely killed off. So I think that might be it. We don't know. The boys, after talking, they find out that they have tattoos on them that they had gotten during the night and they did not feel, which that is a little bit crazy, but I guess it's understandable. I guess because of all the scientific stuff that Wicked does and all the sly, sneaky stuff that they're able to do, it's doable, I guess. But yeah. And then it says that Thomas is to be killed, which is another big scary thing that Wicked tries to do to get the trials to go the way they want it. And it works. It does work. Then after all this is happening, the bodies disappear. What I want to know is how Wicked is able to manipulate the rooms without them hearing it or getting rid of the smell, because they could smell the dead bodies. How is that possible? I want to know that. I want to know that kind of information, the background information. But we don't really get it. So hopefully in the later books, again, we'll find that information out. And that kind of reminded me of how a fun house is. How you can't really trust your eyes or your senses and that kind of stuff. But I can't understand how it could be so realistic where you smell dead body smell. You can see them, and how does that happen? It's confusing. I want to understand that aspect of it, because it just seems impossible that they can, because there was a lot of dead bodies, it said in the book. I want to know how all of them disappeared. Wicked lets the boys all starve for a couple days. There was no food in the area. They only had a bathroom, so they were able to drink and not completely die off of dehydration as well as starvation. But I don't see really the point in that. Maybe it was to make them more desperate to want to leave that place. But then again, they find out that if they had stayed behind, they would have gotten killed off or something. So I think that would have been incentive enough. Why make them starve for a couple of days? I really don't know. The only thing I can say that might be due is so it would cleanse their bodies, like basically have them start from the beginning or something with nothing in them. But I mean, they eventually give them food, so that's just, I don't know. I don't get how all these little things come together yet, and I'm hoping by the time I finish the series, I'll have all those questions answered. I hope so. And then appears a weird rat face guy who works for Wicked, and he just sits there for a while and says that at a specific time he will tell them more information. I don't see why, again, all this stuff has to be orchestrated in that way, making them wait for food, making them wait for information, and all that stuff. And like, there was even a force field, so you can't even like get close to him and talk, like force him to talk, which I don't know. I think they're just trying to make everything specific, like happen at a specific time, so everything is completely goes with their plan, I guess. But still, I don't understand. And I really do hope it is all explained later on, because if not, I would be a little pissed off. He gives the boys information, but it's pretty much either all information they already kind of could have figured out, or it's very vague and general information. And I was sitting there reading it like, really? This is all you're going to tell? You expect these kids to be okay with you just telling them this little amount of information, because it wasn't really anything substantial. There was nothing. Honestly, you could have figured it out yourself if you sat there to just think about it. And that really angered me. I was told that they have to leave at a specific time, and they only have like a window of 5 minutes to leave, and if anybody does not leave by the end of that time, then they will be executed. So again, it's incentive to make them leave and go on with the trials. And they smart leave. Don't know if that's very correct terminology, but smartly, the guys use as much of the materials they were given, like their bedspreads and that kind of stuff, to carry food and use as protection and that kind of stuff. So that was smart. The new creature of this part is just not really even a creature. It's just like a metal blob that gets around their heads and literally cuts off their head, decapitates them, which was really the technology for that. I just can't wrap my mind around it. And so they survive through that little cave thing with the metal blob things that wanted to decapitate people. And then they find that they have to walk through desert, but it's like 10 times worse than a desert. They literally burn if their skin is open to the elements. So they use their sheets to use as like a hood on top of them, which was very smart of them. So they have to go through a town, past some mountains, and then that's where their destination will be. During this whole time where we see more of Thomas's past through his dreams, and we finally start getting some information, but it's again not very helpful to this situation. I have a feeling in either the third or the fourth book we're just going to have a wave of actual substantial, helpful information, and I just can't wait to get it and finally understand what's going on. So, a big thing that was within this book, and it seems to be a common trait throughout many dystopian novels, is trying to keep a hold on humanity. These situations, it's hard to see how people can still act human, but the whole hope in it is showing how even though these time periods are shitty, somehow few people, usually, or small number of people, they hold on to their humanity and do good. And we kind of see that a lot through Thomas, although every now and then there's a little. Then we're introduced to two cranks who are not far gone and are like Thomas and the rest of the Gladers and all that. They're not, like, they still have control of their mind and they're not all zombie-like yet. They're able to help the Gladers, or at least attempt to help them through the town and to their destination. What really made me angry is that I realized from the introduction of Brenda, who was one of the cranks, there was going to be some kind of love triangle in this between Thomas, Teresa, and Brenda. It made me angry. I'm done with the love triangles. They're not really true in real life. I don't know. I just want something more real. And that made me angry. But I have a feeling after everything that happened that there won't be as much of a love triangle, hopefully, and that, I don't know, I just don't like the love triangle. I kind of hope he ends up with Brenda with all the stuff that Teresa did, which again I'll talk about in a little bit, because she did a lot of mean stuff, which was kind of understandable why she did it. She explains it, but still quite, ugh. There was a part in the book where Thomas had to kill a crank. And he says that killing it was so vicious, so brutal. I wish I could have just shot him from a distance with a gun or something. I actually, personally, this is a big thing for me. I personally think that shooting with a gun is a lot more vicious than like stabbing someone as Thomas did with the crank. My reasoning behind that is when you stab someone, you have to be close. So you have kind of like a personal contact with the person. While when you do it with a gun, one, they could have your back turned to you, so they don't even see who kills them, and that's kind of cowardly in my opinion. Two, you can be a distance away, so again, you don't really feel the personal connection. And I mean, you're taking someone's life. Don't you think you should have some kind of connection with them and not just be like, I killed someone, doesn't really matter, I don't really know them, I just decided to kill them. They were bad, I was told they were bad. So when that kind of stuff happens, and even like with wars and stuff, I think we should go back to olden times and just have like swords and that kind of stuff. That would be the more honorable, I think, way of fighting. Not that I'm saying I have anything against like people in the army and that kind of stuff. I personally just think that it is a bit cowardly to be shooting from a large distance with like people's back turned and that kind of stuff. That's just my opinion. I just think we should, if you're going to kill someone, if you're going to take someone's life away, you better be close and know, like at least see them, like see into their eyes and feel that connection, because maybe you wouldn't kill them. And I mean, isn't that good? You don't want to kill people. You're not God, if there is a God. You don't decide who lives and who dies. So that really kind of angered me. I hate it when people say that kind of stuff. rant over, something interesting happened which was not foreseen by the people behind Wicked. Thomas was shot by a crank. And apparently we find out that guns were not allowed to be in this area. So that kind of was an unforeseeable variable, as they would call it, within the trials. And because Thomas was shot and it wasn't supposed to happen, Wicked comes in to save the day, and I guess does surgery on Thomas's shoulder where he was shot. And my question is, if it hadn't been Thomas, would they have saved whoever it was that was shot? That I don't think they would have. I kind of think it was just because Thomas is special in some way that the other Gladers are not. So I kind of think that the entire experiment is kind of biased because they're making sure Thomas survives to a certain point. And I find that a little, it's interesting because I don't know, I just feel like they're biased against him. Like they won't let him die when he isn't supposed to. The whole group of girls, Group B plus Teresa, come into the thing. They steal Thomas in like the most barbaric way ever, and they separate him from the rest of the group of boys. Couldn't say that sentence for some reason. But yeah, they take him away, and they all say how they're supposed to kill them. However, Thomas somehow feels that some of the girls do not want to go along with this plan, but they're only doing it so it seems like they're with it. So then Teresa, who happens to be like the leader who wants this to happen, for Thomas to be killed, she goes away, and Thomas has a chance to talk to the other girls and try to persuade them not to kill him. And it works. But then they have a meeting with Teresa to talk about all that stuff, and Teresa ends up losing. And so they continue journeying to the spot that they were supposed to go, which it happens to be that the girls and guys are supposed to meet up at the same spot to be saved, or whatever. But then somehow Teresa escapes notice and just goes off and hides, and then somehow Thomas finds her, and he trusts her enough to go follow her on his own. She was the chief person who wanted to kill him. I don't see that as being very smart. Within the book, though, I mean, it had to happen, but still, why would you do that? Why would you follow her? And then we find out that Eris, the other telepathic guy who originally was with Group B but was with the boys during this book, is in on the plan. And somehow Eris and Teresa have something together and are such like douchebags that they end up kissing in front of Thomas, which is a total low blow, especially right before you're gonna kill him. I mean, that just seemed like overkill. He is put into a room where he's supposed to die after having the shit beaten out of him by Eris and Teresa. And we find out that that room does not kill him. It actually healed him from all his injuries, because I'm pretty sure it said he had a concussion and a lot of bruises from being whacked by a spear, which must not have been fun at all. And then once he comes out, we find out the whole reason why Teresa was acting like a total bitch, wanting to kill him. She said it was because if that did not happen, they would have killed Thomas anyway. So the whole reason to get him there was not to really kill him, to make it seem like he killed him, and then also to have Thomas feel betrayed by her, which definitely happened. And for some reason that was important to the experiment. They needed him to feel betrayed. I was happy for Thomas. He did not, after coming out of the room and being all healed, he does not immediately trust Teresa and Eris, which I thought was really good. I thought he was gonna, like, as he did before, just completely be like, oh, nothing happened, because for some reason he's really bad at holding grudges, and I don't understand that at all. Then we find new creatures again once they get to the spot, and they have to end up fighting them off, and then just that whole scene, it's just really, they got there, I think, an hour or half an hour before the designated time. They got to the area before the designated time, and of course they threw at them last minute something that would kill a lot of people. Like, they were fighting these weird lightning ball bodies and stuff like that, and it was just really, after all of they've been through, you had to make sure you killed a couple more. Like, honestly, that, I don't see why that was part of the trials again. But, and what really angered me again after this is something that Thomas says. A few dead human bodies were littered on the ground, but not many, and no one Thomas was close to. That kind of made me feel like he did not care, or that he was happy that none of the people he was close to died. What about the other people? They were important. I mean, they were put in the same situation as you. And in the beginning of the book, it says how he didn't even know half the people's name. How can you be in that kind of situation and not know everybody's name? I mean, I know I'm bad with names, but if I was in an experimental trial where you'd most likely be dead, I'd try to at least figure out everybody's name so I can actually know who I'm working with. Because, I mean, that, to me, that would be part of the trust, knowing who these people are. And that really angered me, because, I mean, all of them were necessary in the trials. And just to say that only the people he was close to were important, just, ugh, Thomas, why do you have to say stuff? And then again, how can they act normal after being rescued? How do they not get completely angry at the rescuers? How can they trust them? I mean, after what they've been through, not once, but twice. Twice. And they are just like, okay, I guess I'll go here and go with them. And not even, like, get really angry. Although Thomas did get angry, but only because one of the rescuers was angry that the two cranks, Jorge and Brenda, were brought along. And the rescuer said that only one of them can survive. But then Thomas tackles the rescuer. And somehow that goes along with what I guess the rescuer thought would happen, and like it went with their hypothesis for the experiment. So that somehow them bringing Jorge and Brenda, the two cranks, was somehow figured into the entire experiment. Like, I don't know, I really want to know the background story with the entire wicked plan, because it seems like they have every little detail figured out except for the gun. So I want to know how the gun got in as well, how they missed that when they had every little thing in place. And then they all go to sleep somehow on the aircraft that they were rescued in. And I don't know how they are trustworthy enough to go to sleep with all that happened. I would have at least had one person keep the lookout and go into shift. That's, I think, what the smart thing would have been to do. But no, they all fall asleep, and then Thomas ends up separated from the rest of the group. And again, Teresa tells Thomas briefly telepathically that he has been separated for a week and that the rest of the Gladers are together. So I don't see what the purpose of having Thomas separated was. Obviously, it's going to have to do something with the trials. I don't think the experiment is finished yet. I think it's going to keep on going until like the last chapter of the last book. So we still have another book in a majority of a second one to get before I think the trials are over. And Teresa said how the rescuers told them that Thomas had gone too far with the disease, the flare, which causes him to turn into a crank. So that's his explanation. But I kind of don't, I think I don't trust Teresa more than Thomas does. I do not trust anything that comes out of her mouth. So I don't think that's why, like I said, he's separated. He probably has further trials to undergo, or the rest of the Gladers and the girls and Teresa and Brenda and Joy, Jorge, they're gonna go to do trials without the help of Thomas to see how everything goes, because when we found out in this book, Mina was technically the leader. That was his brand on his neck. But then there were signs throughout the village that they had to cross through to get to the safe haven, that Thomas is the real leader. So obviously, I think it's clear that Thomas is the real leader. And he is important. Like I said, he was saved when he was shot, and I really don't think that if anyone else had been shot, they would have been saved. So he obviously has an important, really important role. So I think they're either going to have Thomas have his own trial, or they're going to have the rest of them have their own trial to see how they do without Thomas. Or they're going to have both, see how they both react in different settings. So that is my prediction for the next book. And I might be completely wrong again, or I might be partially right like how I was this time. But we'll see. Hopefully quite soon I'll be able to read the third book. Then I'll have the new video up. Other than the small quotes that Thomas said that really kind of pissed me off, it was really good. So yeah, please read it. Watch this video. You're already watching it if you are seeing this. Like this video. Subscribe to my channel maybe if you want. Share this. And yeah, hope you enjoyed.